Hi there, Charlie Blaze here for week 3 for the third assignment for Advanced Technologies of Open World Level Streaming. This week we're adding on top of the system that we did for last week, which was chunking. And last week I showed off that this city that I'd built up is actually broken down into chunks, and then the chunks turned on and off based on where the player is. This week I've added on top of this system by now determining that this section of city is a zone, and what I've done is I've made a level manager which will look at a JSON script in the resources folder in here that holds all the data for each of the zones, but only the positions of the zones, and then each of those zones have their own JSON scripts assigned to them, so based on grid coordinates for the world. So if I am to turn off the example chunks and we press play, you can get an idea of what's going on here. So the level manager is making up to 9 zones, which is one that the player's in, along with 8 around the outside. And what it does, based on where the player is, it loads in, or it creates zones based on whereabouts the player is. So only the things that are necessary and needed for the player to see are ever loaded in. So if I roll down here, you can see on the side here, like if I go over to the edge of the world, there's now only 4 chunks, or 4 zones of chunks that are loaded, because we've come to whereabouts the edge of the world is over here. And the same for the other side. Like the further you go in, the more of these zones which are built. And if I were to go into level manager and up the load distance, we can have a better idea of how many of these zones are getting loaded in. There we go. So this is sort of the maximum amount of chunks which are loaded in. So this is the full 9. Would be the full 9 zones if I was making more zones at the top there. And if I move the player across, eventually we'll get to a point where it's moved into another zone, so it builds the three new zones on the side that it's moved into, and unloaded the 3 that it's just come out of. A lot of this system of setting up these zones has been done manually, so for starters, for next week I'd like to make sure that it's all done automatically. So if I build a big world, I can just click go and it will zone off each of those worlds and create their map data JSON files based on that. But other than that, I'd like to maybe move on to starting getting some entities into the world and determining what's here and what's moving around, and see if I can get anything like that working. So thanks very much for watching again, and I'll see you next week.